In the bustling city of Lagos, there lived a young housemaid named Adeobi. She was about 19 years old, with a kind heart and a gentle smile. Adeobi came from a small village in Enugu, where she had lived with her grandmother before she passed away. To support herself and send some money back home, she took a job in the big city. Adeobi worked for a woman named Mrs. Helen, who was known for her sharp tongue and cold heart. Mrs. Helen ran a small boutique and was always busy. She often shouted at Adeobi for small mistakes, like forgetting to iron a shirt perfectly or not dusting the shelves in the corner. Adeobi tried her best to please her madam, but nothing she did seemed to be enough. Mrs. Helen had a son named Chijioke. He was a bright and playful 14-year-old boy. Despite his mother's harshness, he had a good heart. He and Adeobi shared a warm friendship. They often laughed together while cleaning, and Chijioke would help her with the heavy chores. One day, tragedy struck. Chijioke was playing with some firecrackers he had bought from a vendor. He didn't heed Adeobi's warning to be careful. As he lit one, it exploded, creating sparks that set the curtains in the living room ablaze. In a panic, Chijioke tried to put out the fire himself, but it spread quickly, filling the house with thick smoke. Adeobi heard the commotion and rushed toward the living room. Seeing the flames grow higher, her heart raced. She shouted to Chijioke, "Get out! The fire is spreading." But instead of running, Chijioke was frozen in fear, unable to think clearly. Without a moment's hesitation, Adeobi dashed into the room. The fire crackled and hissed, the heat intense against her skin. She grabbed Chijioke's arm and pulled him toward the front door, coughing in the thick smoke. They stumbled out just in time as the fire roared behind them. Once outside, Mrs. Helen joined them, her face pale with fear. She hugged Chijioke tightly, tears in her eyes. "I thought I had lost you," she cried. Adeobi stood to the side, feeling a mix of relief and worry. Mrs. Helen had always been harsh, but in that moment, Adeobi saw her as a mother, frightened and desperate for her child. The fire brigade arrived, and with their help, the fire was controlled before it spread to neighboring houses. Although the living room was damaged, thankfully, everyone was safe. Mrs. Helen turned to Adeobi, her expression changing to one of gratitude. "You saved my son, Adeobi," she said, her voice shaking. "Thank you." But the relief was short-lived. Mrs. Helen soon reverted to her old self, demanding Adeobi work double time to clean up the mess. She yelled for every speck of dust, blaming her for the fire even though it was an accident. Adeobi put her head down and obeyed, but deep inside, she felt hurt and demoralized. Then, days later, something extraordinary happened. While cleaning the boutique, Adeobi found a small brochure about a scholarship program for young women. It was providing opportunities for training in fashion and design in Nigeria. She showed it to Mrs. Helen, hoping the woman might support her in applying. "I want to better myself," Adeobi said. Mrs. Helen glanced at the brochure and waved her hand dismissively. "You don't need to waste your time on that. You'll never make it in fashion." Once again, Adeobi felt her heart sink. It was as if years of hard work and kindness meant nothing to her madam. Discouraged but determined, Adeobi prepared her application anyway. She poured her soul into her essay, writing about her love for fashion and her dreams of creating beautiful dresses for women. She managed to submit her application just before the deadline and kept her fingers crossed, hoping for a miracle. Weeks passed, and the fire in the boutique was finally fixed. But Mrs. Helen remained unkind. One evening, however, as Adeobi was washing the dishes, she saw Chijioke watching her closely. "What's wrong, Chijioke?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "I don't understand why my mother treats you this way," he said quietly. "You saved my life, and yet, she doesn't see how great you are." Adeobi smiled gently. "It's okay. People can be harsh sometimes. What matters is that you're safe. Then, one sunny morning, Adeobi received the letter she had been waiting for. It was a scholarship offer. She read the words over and over, her heart racing with joy.